Last video, we talked about the rise of the Song Dynasty. The period of the 10 dynasties, the chaos after the Tang Dynasty collapsed, was brought to an end by the Song, who reunited China again. But all good things come to an end. This is our end of the China unit and the end of the Song Dynasty. The Song government had to deal with both internal and external problems. In addition to the threats of peasant rebellion, foreign groups had also begun to attack China's borders. Chronic overspending and outlays for tribute undermined China's finances. The Song also ceded territory to border tribes to keep them from invading. To try and keep the Khitan from seizing more power and Chinese territory, the Song signed an agreement with them that required the Chinese to pay 100,000 ounces of silver and 200,000 rolls of silk in annual tribute. The treaty was perceived as a national disgrace and was a huge drain on Chinese finances. At the same time, the Qiang people invaded and occupied regions of China, establishing the kingdom of the Zhizhe. The Song tried to placate them with silver and silk, further weakening China's financial situation. So buying off all these barbarians was really draining China. The Jurchens, another northern tribe, attacked and conquered the Khitan in 1114. The Song cooperated with them in their attack on the Khitan, hoping that a Jurchen victory would allow the Chinese to reclaim some northern territory, especially the city of Nanjing. Instead of working with the Song to reclaim lost territory, however, the Jurchen moved to overthrow the Song, who mistakenly believed that they could take advantage of the Jurchen. The Song governor, Huizong, had allowed the government to grow weak, devoting resources to the pursuit of luxury rather than military readiness. For example, he had rare flowers planted and designed elaborate palace decoration, but did not build up defenses or strengthen the armed forces. The Jurchens sacked the city of Nanjing instead of helping the Song recover it. The northern portion of the Song Empire fell to the Jin, and the Jurchen leader Nuzhen seized power and established the Jin Dynasty in 1115. The northern Song leaders fled and re-established a power base in the south. So now China is split between the south, which is still Song, and the north, which is now Qin, or the Jin Dynasty. The southern Song dynasty was established in the city of Hangzhou in 1127. An 1142 peace treaty fixed the boundary between the Jin and the Song, and the Song agreed to pay an annual tribute to the Jin. The southern Song incorporated many of the same societal expectations that had existed in the north: peasant taxation, land allocation, and so on. The government also maintained the same basic structure of institutions. Hangzhou, the southern Song capital, along with other cities, became thriving urban centers. A number of towns became relatively prosperous, and port cities like Guangzhou developed to facilitate overseas trade. See, the Song had lost their Silk Road access because of the Jin and had to now focus on sea trade. The Southern Song developed a network of trade routes and a number of important ports like Guangzhou. These ports came to play a very important role because many traditional trade routes became cut off when the Song lost territory. The Chinese continued to trade paper, silk, and porcelain for items such as Persian rugs and tapestries, aromatic woods, and spices. Ports developed up and down the southeast coast to cater to this burgeoning ocean trade. As more and more foreign merchants came to China to participate in trade, cities actually developed foreign quarters in which they could live. Chinese technological advancement also continued. Navigational techniques improved, helping facilitate trade. Larger ships were developed that could hold more than 600 people and cargo, used multiple masts to improve navigability and speed, and the new ships had separate watertight compartments to protect the cargo, and employed a stern post rudder for better steering. Agriculturally, the South was much more productive than the North. The South grew crops like rice, beans, mulberries, cotton, and wheat, and had very high yields. This agricultural production supported a large population, and the success of agriculture allowed more people to take jobs outside of agriculture and pursue urban jobs and professions. A number of large interprovincial trade networks also arose, exchanging items such as porcelain, lacquerware, iron, metal, sugar, paper, and printed books. Many trade goods ended up in the hands of the growing numbers of rich families in the cities, who built grand houses which were decorated lavishly. Cities grew for a variety of reasons: movement from the north, increased food supply, relocation as people sought jobs outside the agricultural sector, and a flourishing economy that benefited from interregional and international trade. Cities contained a variety of shops, including drugstores, artisan stalls, bookshops from the boom in printing, and even pet shops. The southern Song capital, Hangzhou, was a very sophisticated city, crisscrossed by canals and bridges. Renowned for its wealth, cleanliness, and diversions, Hangzhou contained marketplaces, parks, gardens, bathhouses, restaurants, and performance venues. Much of the government's revenue came from taxes on manufactured goods, customs duties on foreign trade, and money generated from state run monopolies on products like salt, tea, and alcohol. The southern Song economy was booming, and the empire experienced overall economic stability, though problems did still exist. Along with new wealth came corruption and exploitation of the poor. Rich landowners continued to slip off the tax rolls, increasing pressure on the peasants. Some peasants turned to banditry, and many saw their standard of living decrease. They were also hurt by inflation. While the paper money the government issued was more easily transported, it was not backed by silver, making its value somewhat shaky. The renewed emphasis on Confucianism that appeared at the end of the Tang Dynasty strengthened during the Song Dynasty. The scholar gentry helped promote the revitalization of Confucianism and make it the accepted orthodox. Confucianism emphasized five important relationships: ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, elder brother, younger brother, and friend and friend. These important relationships aim to create a harmonious society. Neo-Confucianism stressed morality and responsibility in government and focused on the public service rather than self-interest. Neo-Confucianists strove to apply Confucian principles to everyday life and behavior and to pursue personal morality. They also placed a high value on tradition, rank, obligation, difference, and ritual. The founder of the movement was Zhu Ji. His commentaries on Confucius became the standard and thus defined Chinese elite understandings of the tradition down to the present time. Various branches of Neo-Confucianism also developed and flourished. For example, the White Deer Grotto branch urged students to pursue self-cultivation and learning rather than just viewing education as a tool to pass the civil service exam. Some merchants and artisans became very wealthy, developing into an elite class with an expanding taste for the finer things in life, such as silk, porcelain, paintings, books, and so on. Land ownership no longer provided the only path to social status. The position of women worsened during this time period, largely because of the revitalization of Confucianism and its emphasis on the subordinate role of women in relationships. Patriarchal attitudes hardened, and laws were enacted that transferred a woman's property to her husband upon marriage. Women also could not remarry if their husbands died or divorced them. Women were given just enough education to read edited Confucian writings that stressed the submissive role of women in society. Only a few women, usually ones from elite families, were allowed to receive a strong education. For the vast majority of women, education was intended only to make them better wives and mothers. Footbinding originally appeared during the Tang Dynasty and proliferated during the Song Dynasty. The practice attempted to make women more attractive by creating what was known as the lily foot. The process involved bending the toes of a girl underneath her foot toward her heel in order to break the arch. The child's foot was wrapped in strips of silk that were gradually tightened as she grew. Ultimately, the bones in her foot broke and she lost most of her independent mobility. Girls forced to undergo the procedure had their feet bound very early in their life, usually between 5 and 7 years of age, although it could be done later. Early on, the practice was most prevalent in the upper classes. Breaking the arch of a girl's foot made it nearly impossible for her to work. Therefore, if a family wanted to demonstrate their position in the upper echelons of society, they would have their daughter's feet bound, indicating that they did not need her to work. Footbinding also proved an effective means for confining women and preserving their subordinate status in society. The practice lasted for more than 900 years. It is important to note that footbinding was not widely done throughout China at this time. Women in the middle and lower classes did not participate. and the practice was relatively unknown in southern China. In some ways, technological advances and interest in science during the Song era were fueled by Neo-Confucianism. Even the founder of Neo-Confucianism, Zhaozi, stressed the importance of studying practical subjects as well as philosophy. The Song era witnessed a variety of advances in the areas of agriculture, manufacturing, transport, including innovations in cultivation, threshing, carding, and spinning, and the invention of canal locks, water clocks, and water powered mills to grind grain. Inventors also refined the compass, making it more appropriate for seafaring by covering the needle in glass, making it smaller. Song mathematicians were the first to use fractions, which they used to analyze the phases of the moon. From the study of the moon, they constructed an accurate calendar and also did extensive work in timekeeping. For example, Song inventors created a chain driven clock, the first known chain driven mechanism in history. The clock told the time of day, the day of the month, and indicated lunar movement. The Chinese faced near constant military threats from the northern tribes and looked for ways to improve their battle readiness. As Chinese designers became more advanced in metallurgy, they found ways to produce weapons of incredible strength by using high temperatures in the manufacturing process. The Chinese also made wide use of iron, which could withstand assaults much better than other materials. Often, bridges and other things would be constructed from iron, as would body armor, designed to protect soldiers. To counter the menacing cavalry of the Khitans and the Jurchens, the Chinese used projectiles propelled by gunpowder, including flaming arrows and exploding shells. As libraries and private bookshops spread, more and more books became available to people. Writers created anthologies of stories, encyclopedias, and academic treatises on diverse subjects in geography, history, science, medicine, and architecture. The introduction of printing books led to the creation of thread sewn volumes in the place of rolled manuscripts, thus allowing easier access to the contents. Books spread rapidly. The Song government at one point had more than 70,000 volumes in its library, and many private collections had even more. Some of the most notable books published during this era were Pharmacopoeia, a medical encyclopedia that listed 893 medicinal herbs and their properties and uses. The Treatise on Architectural Methods, which described different building methods, tools, materials, and techniques. A collection of the most important military technology book, which discussed different techniques and weapons, including a section on making and using gunpowder. The New History of the Five Dynasties and the Mirror of History, which recounted various elements of Chinese history. C was an expensive, emotive form of poetry popular during the Song era. While there were many prolific C poets at the time, two of the best known were Jin Jijing and Li Qunzhao, who was a very forceful and independent woman. Su Shi from 1037 to 1101 also known as Su Dongpo, was an official court poet and painter who tried to find a way to combine the two media by filling his poems with highly evocative visual imagery. Paintings. Landscapes were the most popular form of painting during the Song, often with renderings of palaces that focused on architectural elements. The emperor Huizong was himself a painter, and he devoted a great deal of time and money to the arts, even as they became a financial burden on the imperial treasury. Chinese style perspective, Song era innovation, employed three focuses in painting: mountains in the far distance, lesser hills, forests, and streams in the middle foreground, and a road or path running through the foreground of the picture. In his works, the painter Fan Quan placed small human figures alongside mountains, streams, trees, in order to emphasize the relatively small place humans occupied in the natural world. Most Song era artists painted in black and white, demonstrating their mastery through brushstroke techniques rather than through use of color. One popular technique involved painting directly onto fans or scrolls. As the scroll was unrolled, viewers would see several related images of successive scenes of a story. The collapse of the Song. The Mongols, a nomadic people from the steppes of Central Asia, conquered China in the 1200s. The Mongols had a strong cavalry made up of exceptional horsemen who were also skilled bowmen. They attacked and overthrew the Jin in the North China in 1234. Once they controlled the north, the Mongols posed a constant threat to the Song. The Mongols turned to a circuitous strategy designed to encircle the Song, moving troops through Tibet and Szechuan. Under the great leader Kublai Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan, they fully moved on southern Song territory in 1260. The Song put up bitter resistance, but the Mongols' military superiority eventually proved too great. In addition, the Mongols were very good at learning and adapting new techniques and technologies, such as gun foundries, for example, which they then used to defeat the Chinese. Hongzhou surrendered in 1276, marking the end of the Song Dynasty. In 1279, the Mongol-controlled Yuan dynasty was established. China under the Mongols. The collapse of the Southern Song inaugurated a period of foreign domination in China under the Yuan dynasty. These were Mongolians now in charge of China. The Chinese would ultimately rise up and overthrow the Mongols, reestablishing Chinese control with the Ming dynasty. The events, developments, and innovations of medieval China have a far reaching impact. Chinese goods, such as silk and porcelain, became known and highly valued worldwide. Chinese inventions like the compass, gunpowder, paper, and printing had a huge impact both in Asia and Europe. Chinese political innovations, like the civil service exam, still exist throughout the world today. Thus, in many ways, the legacy of the medieval time period in China extended well after the end of the medieval period, both in China and beyond. As the end of our unit on China, medieval China.